The Man Whore Podcast is sponsored by HotMovies.com. Try out some ethical paid-for porn for free with none of those hidden fees or secret recurring subscriptions when you sign up at HotMovies.com/bonus and use the promo code MANWHORE. I want to thank Tushy for sponsoring the Man Whore Podcast. Get 10% off your own easy-to-install bidet attachment and leave the toilet feeling fresh and clean. Visit HelloTushy.com and use promo code MANWHORE. Win money using free money. That's what I like to do. And BetDSI.com is offering first-timers a 100% deposit bonus of up to $500 when you use promo code MAN18. Oh my God, they're just giving money away? That's crazy. You can use their mobile site to bet on every play, every drive, and every score while you're listening to the Man Whore Podcast. All you gotta do is go to betdsi.com and use promo code MAN18 for this limited time bonus. Once again, that's betdsi.com and use promo code MAN18. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to the brother fuckers, mother lovers, and daddy's daughters. This is Billy Procida, and you're listening to the Man Whore Podcast. Was that one a little uncomfortable for you? It will make more sense later on in the episode. What's up, everyone? How you doing? Welcome to my show, where I typically talk to women I've hooked up with about sex, dating, and why we didn't work out. However, this week's special guest is not one of my former flames. No, I've got on fellow stand-up comedian and podcaster Janet Hyde, and I am so excited to share her with y'all in a bit. But first, show dates, people. Show dates. Oh, yeah. What's up to everyone who came and hung out at the Chicago little fan meetup? We had a few of y'all came through, hung out a bit, watched some football. That was a grand old time. Thanks for keeping me company in Chi-Town. But Los Angeles, listen up. November 4th, I'm going to be doing a live Man Whore podcast at the Dojo of Comedy in Hollywood. That's a venue that's above the Sycamore Tavern. For information for tickets, go to manwhorepod.com/tickets. Keep November 4th open. Get your tickets ASAP. Okay, let me feel a little less anxiety. If you know you're going, get your ticket so I feel less anxious about sales. I'm also interested in doing a listener meetup in LA because I'm going to be there for like 10 days. So if you'd be interested in hanging out with me and some fellow fan whores, shoot me an email. Okay, and if there's enough interest, I'll put something together. I do want to plug a different show. I want to plug somebody else's stand-up show. Friend of the pod, Andrea Allen, is recording her first ever comedy album here in New York City on October 13th. And I'm going to be there. And if you're in town, I think you should be there too. She's going to be doing an hour of stand-up and releasing an album from it. So if you want tickets, there's going to be a link in the show notes. It's on October 13th at Gutter Bar in Brooklyn. We can go together. How's that? Let's get to your emails, everyone. Thank you for the feedback regarding last week's Desire episode, our voyeur panel, if you will. That was so much fun to record. It was a lot of work to produce, and so I'm just thrilled that that people enjoyed it. I'm glad it worked for you. I did get this email from an Ian. I have recently come across your podcast. I'm a multi-drop delivery driver in Liverpool, UK, so I spend hours in a van driving and listening to a lot of shit repetitive music. I must say, Nikki was a great way to start and love some of the topics you've discussed. I'm married of 4 years and feel like I'm living vicariously through your stories in single life. I'd love a shout out if that's something you do, even though it may take a good number of months of intense listening to catch up the last 4 years. I'm currently on episode 12 after only 2 days, so we will see how long it takes to catch up. I've put some of my friends onto the podcast, which I'm sure it could turn into a pay it forward movement for your podcast in my country. Ian, wow, 12 episodes in 6 days? How are you not sick of me already? You'll be caught up in no time, dude. But hey, you don't have to live vicariously through me. You mentioned you're married. Are there things that you'd like to be doing that currently don't fall under the purview of your marital contract with your wife? I'm assuming wife. Because then you could bring that up to her or him and negotiate that and go live out your own fantasies, dude. You don't gotta just live them through me. Go achieve one yourself. And if you want to send me an email with your comments, your questions, your booby pictures, whatever, you can send all that over to manwhorepod@gmail.com. Now, there's a lot of times over the last few weeks, last month or so, I've read a lot of emails that were pretty positive. They were emails that were like somewhat congratulatory. How dare I be so kind to myself? So we're going to do a segment where I'm going to read some 1-star reviews from iTunes. All right, it's a segment I have decided to call Sounds About Right. First one comes from a user named Freud Would Have Had a Field Day. I guess this person made their iTunes account just to give me a shitty review. The subject line is yet another one of these I see. They write, he relies on crude humor to fill out. By the way, I'm using the voice of the person I imagine wrote this thing. He relies on crude humor to fill out his episodes and seems to vastly overcompensate his man-whore image. He talks about his vast sexuality so much, I have to seriously question if anything he says is actually real. Sounds more like the kind of guy who buys stock in fleshlights than one who's genuinely successful with women. The guy's got such obvious issues with sexuality that one has to wonder what's really going on. I wouldn't even recommend this podcast to my local frat boys. This persona has been done before, and it wasn't all that funny when The Man Show did it 15 years ago. Well, I liked The Man Show. I thought The Man Show was kind of fun. I won't go rewatch it. I'm not going to go back and find out that that's ruined for me in 2018. That's why I can't watch Delirious by Eddie Murphy anymore. Not going to ruin The Man Show for me. But, yeah, surly person. What a ruse this would be if I found this many actors to pretend to have slept with me. Oh my, wouldn't that be interesting? But hey, sounds about right. Okay, next 1-star review comes from a user named Pugnacious Toaster. And the subject line is, don't buy, horrible. And I mean, it's a free podcast, so I don't know what they're referring to here. But okay. I sense the topics he speaks about are poorly researched, if at all, as he seems to know little about them. He merely spouts ignorant statements that mislead the listener and try to persuade you, get this, to agree with his ridiculous and ignorant thoughts. Yeah, isn't that what the whole stating your opinion thing is? To kind of persuade someone to think the way you do? It's kind of like leaving a 1-star review. You're trying to persuade people to not listen to my show. Sounds familiar. Also, Pugnacious Toaster, you ugly ass bitch. And I'm saying bitch as in I'm assuming this person's a fella. Pugnacious just sounds like such a man adjective. But, I hope that review felt good. Last one I'm going to read is titled, Not Interesting, Not Good, Waste of Time, by Amicable Nemesis. They write, this is both boring and uninspired. 5-star reviews, obviously fake. Yep, 5-star reviews, over 170 of them or whatever it is, fake. So if y'all are listening right now, please head on over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave me another fake 5-star review. I would very much appreciate it. But I mean, if anyone from Apple's listening, I'm not asking anyone to leave me a real fake 5-star review. I'm asking for fake 5-star reviews. That's what I'm asking for here. Okay, yeah, so that all sounds about right to me. And thank you to everyone who has left me positive ratings and reviews. Know what I haven't talked about in a couple weeks? Hotmovies.com. And I'm excited to chat with them again. They are a proud sponsor of this show, helping make things happen over here. This is an exciting announcement for Hot Movies. Is they have now added a trans lesbian category, specifically for their trans women films, because they seem to be getting more and more popular. I think this is a wonderful, inclusive, and progressive move on the part of a porn site. They've got trans women with other cis women. They have trans women with other trans women, really breaking it down because they recognize that, recognizing that there is even more nuance to some of these categories and interests. So that's great, and that's awesome. And it goes to show the wide variety of porn you could ethically pay for over at hotmovies.com. What other categories do they have? I will briefly just mention that they have like where the porn takes place. Like, is it in New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, Vegas, Miami? They have New England as a category. I want to know the Patriots fan who is so obsessed with where his porn was shot. He's like, hey, I only watch the porn that comes from Boston. I only watch Boston, maybe New Hampshire porn too, but only porn shot in New England. Do I know what accent that specifically is? No, because there were not enough R's in what I was saying to properly do a Boston accent. I mean, I guess I could have done like the Spotlight Boston accent. It's Spotlight. Yeah. New England. Yeah, I watched the porn that shot in New England. I like it. Maybe some New Hampshire stuff. Spotlight. Anyways. You can go watch any of these categories and more over at hotmovies.com, which recently debuted Misha Cross's directorial debut called Misha in Exile. And you can get 20 free minutes on the house on me when you sign up at hotmovies.com/bonus and use the promo code MANWHORE. Hashtag pay for your porn, or you know what? Hashtag pay for like some of your porn. And you should go do that at hotmovies.com. Now, before we get to this week's guest, Janet Hyde, I want to play a little teaser for y'all. Last week, I put out a $10 bonus episode on Patreon, exclusively on Patreon, where I sat down with the outgoing summer intern, Mia. Mia is a delight and became like a staple of the show over the course of the summer. You may remember hearing Mia after ManwhoreCon. She co-hosted an intro with me. I'm going to play a little bit of a clip about Mia's relationship with her parents. More specifically, her mother.
It was like my mom has just been always very open about sex. When I was like 10 or 11, she gave me this book called What Your Mother Didn't Tell You About Sex. Mm-hmm. And it's just like this really thick book. And it has so many things about like, not that she wouldn't talk to me about it, because she would talk to me about anything. She just figured like she can just read this book and come to me with questions. It's actually like a really good book. I'm sure it's like outdated unless there's a new edition and everything, but like it had stuff about like having an orgasm when you're a woman, and like tons of stuff about like how to like have anal sex in a good way.
Yeah.
And all that stuff that like,
did you put that to practice?
Yes.
Okay.
But all that stuff that like my mom probably wouldn't have like said to me. So like when I was 10, they were like, here's how you have anal sex. And I'm like, interesting. Like flipping through this book.
So you got fairly liberal parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like I'm assuming there wasn't a lot of like keeping you away from boys and you couldn't have boyfriends or anything like that. If they're giving you a book that has anal sex on it.
Yeah, I still can't have boys sleep over.
Really?
Like technically, like, so I live upstairs and there's a guest room also upstairs. So like My parents were like, well, he can sleep in the guest room, but we don't know what happens after we go to sleep. And then
that's
like
just
that
so
type of shit.
fucking annoying
Yeah.
to me. Because, like, look, take a stand or
Yeah.
let it go. But don't do this wishy-washy, like, oh, we don't know.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
And then also my brother, I have an older brother who's been able to have like his girlfriends over since he was in high school.
So there's
that double standard.
Mhm.
Like as
have you
liberal.
brought that up?
Oh, absolutely. I yell about it every single time.
But then what's the response?
They're like, it's different. Especially my dad. He's like, you're my little girl, and I don't want to. I don't want to know. And I'm like, but then, Daddy. I still call him Daddy. That's the problem.
Daddy,
too.
like dudes have fucked my ass. That's what you should say next time.
Oh my god.
Dudes have fucked my ass. Let him cuddle with me.
I think he would cry.
Yeah, so you want to hear that with a little bit more context? Do you want to hear a little bit more of Mia's voice in your ears? To get access, you got to go to patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Her episode is available only for my $10 and up fan whores. However, you can't splurge $10 a month right away. I get it. Hey, for $5 a month, you'll get access to over 100 bonus episodes, including tomorrow's bonus episode with this week's guest, Janet Hyde. Again, go to Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. And that seems like a good segue to bring up that it's time for the fan whore appreciation moment. Heyo. This is the part of the podcast that I have now moved to the end of the intro, where I like to thank some of the members of my fan whore community on Patreon. I want to give a shout out to Try SC. Don't really know what that fake name is supposed to stand for or mean, but you're very, very engaging on Instagram. She's a hot, stripping Aussie. So into it. And thank you, honey, for your support. Shout out and a thank you to Emily Pierce. It was a wonderful delight to meet you at ManwhoreCon this year with your very cool boyfriend. You two were very fun to watch explore. Shout out to Brian Watson, not just a fan whore on Patreon, not just someone who was at ManwhoreCon, not just one of my metamors, but also an upcoming guest on the Man Whore podcast. Brian's actually a sex researcher. He researches porn. So you can actually go follow him on Twitter at History of Porn. And I want to give one last thank you to Audrey B, new to the Champagne Room. And I'm so glad you finally decided to start sharing with us in there. That was a cute Selfie Saturday post you did. So we hope to read and see more of you. But now for this week's guest, Janet Hyde. I've known Janet for several years, quite some time. Very funny stand-up comedian here in the city. Super, super feminist and super, super fun to watch her go on stage at an open mic right after some unfunny douche nozzle just throws out a bunch of like offensive and unfunny jokes. A topic that we discuss in the beginning of this week's episode. Where, yeah, the first like 10 minutes or so is a lot about stand-up comedy. Where is the line? What can be joked about? And how we respond to that type of humor before we dive into, the topics of dating and gender and, having sex with your future brother-in-law, stuff like that. If you do dig it, she does a great podcast in her own right called Dude Talks to a Lady, which I've actually been on quite recently. I think I was like episode 50. So you can go check that out. But for now, let's go on over and talk to Janet Hyde.
This is actually better for me to talk about this because then I don't feel like I will need to talk about it explicitly in my podcast, which my mom always listens to. I told my mom I was home for a week.
Okay. I mean, you're welcome to talk now, or you can do it here.
I didn't know you had started yet.
I mean, I hit the thing. I find a fade-in point, one of those annoying things.
Sure.
Where it's like 5 minutes, like, wait, were we recording that whole time? I was like, yeah. But
It's a real bait and switch move there.
Right? Yeah, it's very. I'm
going to stop telling that story then.
I'm very uncomfortable that you phrase as bait and switch. I'm like, oh, that feels a little more uncomfortable.
Why? I mean, that's just a phrase.
Sure.
I use that phrase all the time.
Yeah.
Now I feel
now it's a little contrived.
Right. Well, no, I'm just not going to tell that story now.
Put the mic down and not have it there.
No. You gotta start.
I can start. It's okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and say I'm here with comedian Janet Hyde,
Hello.
fellow podcaster. There's a show called Dude Talks to a. Dude
that's
Talks
right.
to a Lady. I thought I inversed
People,
it.
yeah, people really trip over the name.
We're all very nervous to be wrong in front of
That's
you.
that makes me both very happy and a little sad.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that when people are trying to be right, it stifles conversation and makes people super boring.
Right.
But I do want to terrify men. It's a thing that I high key want. And I think I've succeeded. I used to not realize how successful I had become at that.
No, you are excellent at it because I have, in the last year or so, tried to stop caring about being wrong and just owning my opinion. And it's whatever. And yet I showed up to do your show and was like, oh, no, you got to be right here because she's funny and informed. So. Because a lot of people, because on the internet, there's so many people who just want to yell at a thing that was meant to be funny.
Right.
And they're not funny.
Right.
And so they're only viewing it in this lens of this person said a thing. That's what they think. And, but I trust when someone like you or Klemp or someone has to say something, I trust it because y'all are also funny.
Well, thank you. I do find that I get myself into trouble, though, even because I have a pretty flippant sense of humor and I like to talk about very serious things in a very jokey way and say things ironically or sarcastically that people who know me well understand, but I recognize doesn't always play.
Yeah. Do you notice that the people who most want to give you advice on how to do comedy correctly have never been funny themselves? So it's why would I take comedy advice from you, blogger? You've never been funny.
I've been lucky enough that I haven't gotten a ton of unsolicited comedy advice, which is maybe just because not many people are aware of my comedy.
No, nonsense. Well, do you want to tell people what your trap of a show is?
It's not a trap. I
Which
need to
you
make
say
buttons
every
that say, yeah. So my podcast, Dude Talks to a Lady, I have male comics tell a joke about women, and then we discuss the topic, and then I grill them on feminism and gender-related topics. And the grilling is meant to be lighthearted, but also existentially terrifying. So, but I do always, when I'm booking guys on the podcast, I always say it's not a trap. It's really I'm not trying to make anybody look bad. That's very much not the point.
Only you can make yourself look bad.
Right. I mean, truly,
I
don't say that part, but
that's how the Daily Show happens.
Right.
Everyone's they're going to make me look bad. No. Only you can do
but
that.
I'm not asking trap questions. I'm not asking trick questions. I try to ask super open-ended things, or other thing I like to do is ask guys to define things what do you think feminism means, or what do you think toxic masculinity means? And I don't think that there's a correct answer. I think there's a lot of different answers to that. I think some are more right than others, but mostly I think it's interesting and useful to force men to think about these things that they can opt out of thinking about in their day-to-day lives.
Well, you have a mix of dudes on the show. So you have guys who comics I know who are very socially conscious of these things. You have guys who are good dudes and maybe not as conscious. They kind of just walk through the world being there's a thing going on, but I don't know, fart joke. And then there's the guys where you're we need to have a discussion.
Right. I definitely feel like I'm constantly seeking out guys that are not politically correct, even though I hate that term, but guys who would be concerned about the PC police. I really want to talk to them more than anybody else because I think it's interesting. And, I think conversations in which people don't agree with each other are usually more interesting than people agreeing all over each other.
Right.
Especially with woke comedy dudes trying to prove that they know what a period is or whatever it might be. And I love that guys want to be on the right side of these things and are engaging with it. Not trying to say that that's not awesome, but it does sort of stifle an interesting conversation when a guy's afraid of seeming wrong in front of me. Whereas opposed to a guy that comes in is what's this broad gonna say?
Yeah.
Great.
They're actually going to be more open and honest with you sometimes than others.
Absolutely. So I have had fewer of those people coming in with that attitude, but I've always really enjoyed those. And the guys themselves have been the most grateful to do it.
Yeah. And those were guys like Justin and Doug and them. Doug who made my intern cry.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I brought her to my open mic.
Uh-huh.
And
he was just doing crowd, just
He did
based on his set, or like did he talk to her?
Yeah, like she was the only woman in the room at the time. The other female comics had left, and she does some comedy at college, and this was like early on in our working together. I overestimated how exposed to stand up maybe like, or how exposed to open mic level.
Or you underestimated how fucking uncomfortable that is for everyone.
Maybe.
Even seasoned comics.
Well, I didn't know Doug was going to be there.
Sure, but it doesn't take Doug to feel really shitty. Because sometimes even if it's like a bunch of very progressive dudes, it's just the sheer difference of like, I'm the only one.
Sure. Well, there were some other chicks like in the room, and then eventually, and you don't like the word chick. I remember this now. But there were some others in the room, and then they just haven't left. So by the time he goes on, looking the very like he looked like who we put on the wanted poster. Yeah. You know? And he just he's like doing his things like, yeah, women are dumb. But he pointed at her and he was like, women are fucking retarded. And he kind of singled her out.
Right, of course.
Now, on his end, he's
a single person there.
Yeah. The only slight minimal defense I can give to him is that he thinks she's like a comic in the room. But she doesn't realize that he doesn't, she also doesn't know him. And so it was very uncomfortable. She had to leave.
Yeah.
And we had to have like some serious talks about like comedy, open mics, chauvinism, things like that. The difference between when Doug does it, who I think we both have a different context for him versus because he's also funny versus like a guy who's just being shitty to be shitty because he is shitty.
Right. But I think that the guys that are shitty and funny also aren't always funny. You know, there have been definitely times like at the Grizzly Pair in particular where it's like there's a certain, you know, attitude or tone that is more accepted than if you're at like a Brooklyn like bar show type situation. And I think a lot of times like I have definitely laughed in spite of myself at like super like chauvinist type guys making jokes about women. And those are the kind of jokes I definitely want on my podcast because some of them are funny. But sometimes they also just say women are fucking retarded. And like, that's never okay.
Yeah,
like, that's not funny or interesting. And if you're pretending that that's satire, I'm not convinced.
Like, you better have a
you actually think that you clearly do put women in a very separate category from men.
Yeah.
That is less than
100% to say something like that.
I am a bigger fan of let the joke bomb. Like, I still think that is the ultimate punishment for anyone who's pretending to be a comedian.
Sure.
Because like you just have, when you like have this opinion, like this is not only my opinion, but it's also hilarious, and you say it and no one's on board.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a valuable lesson, but I think that some people aren't going to learn from that.
Sure.
Because nothing they say gets laughs, and then they just like turn on the crowd and
yeah. Well, there's like an unfunny dude who seems a little mentally unstable who I've had to, he was 2 of the 3 times I've had to lit early where I'm just like, nah, like I'm just not okay with what you're saying. And again, I'm off. But it was about like, where's that line? Like, and who's the responsibility? I mean, you were mentioning like the aura of like the pair, and you know, that is a room run completely by straight dudes. And then like these Brooklyn rooms are run by like a diversity of people. And it's interesting, like the difference, you know, there.
Yeah. And I think a thing that I've talked about a lot of like my attitude as a comic and a woman is different from others.
How
of,
do
like,
you do it?
Well, honestly, this sounds messed up probably, but like a big part of why I wanted to do comedy was like to get in these fights with men, because I've always had that sort of like aggressive, combative element. I don't like love being in fights, but I know I have the capacity for it, and I like have things to say. And don't mind like going toe to toe with a misogynist troll type person. And so when I'm in those rooms, I'm like gearing up for battle in some way.
I love watching you go up like one or 2 comics right after is so much fun.
And sometimes hosts will do that on purpose. Like there was a time, my first real encounter with Doug Bryan actually was earlier in that mic, another comic who I'm not going to bother to name because nobody knows him and he's a bad person, was just like trying out his hot rape stuff, like prison rape jokes. Yeah. And he wasn't getting anything. Nobody was laughing, thankfully. And then he said something like, well, I got to try it out here first, you know? And then I, from the back of the room, lightly heckled, no, you don't. And like that got a laugh. And of course, he got very mad that I heckled him, which I, for the record, think that heckling at open mics is totally fair game.
Yeah.
Because,
Well, especially if you're doing very poorly and
Right.
it's some bad shit.
or it's like sometimes people like say things that kind of invites commentary and like it's, you know, a workshop type space. Anyway. So he didn't like that. We had a back and forth from the stage, which was all fine. And then one of my buddies was the host, and he like put me up next on purpose. Like I was supposed to go in that group, but he put me up immediately. And then I told one of my rape jokes, and I was like, "And that's how you do it.
That's how you do a rape joke."
Like yelled at, not yelled at him, but like took him down. And then he waited for me 40 minutes after the mic had ended, and waited till I was like chatting with some other comics.
Sure.
He waited until everybody left to sit down across from me, stare at me like a serial killer, and tell me over and over again how much he didn't like me and how he just hated me so much that he must love me. And it was like super fucking weird. And it went on for like way too long. And he's like, can I get you a drink? And I'm like, no, what? And I was like, I'm going to leave now. And I was like really shaken by it in this way that, you know, him calling me a cunt from the stage didn't bother me at all. But him like waiting until it's a separate situation to like make me feel small, that was super shitty.
Well, because like one's like all in front, and you know that's going to be over when his time's up, and the other is
fair game. Like I'm giving you shit, you can give me shit. That's fine. But
now he's like,
try to single me out and make me feel like scared as a woman alone and not a comic was like super fucked up. But earlier that day, I'd been chatting with Doug Bryan and having a really actually fascinating conversation with him about all this stuff, because he's like, oh, you're one of those feminist broads and you're always wearing that bandana, and you know, he offered to break my nose.
I've never seen you wear a bandana.
Really?
Yeah.
I do the like Rosie the Riveter kind of thing a fair amount. Not that often.
Okay.
But it is shocking how many times men comment on it to me as like a look I have. It like really bugs them for some reason. And so I do it more often.
Okay.
But yeah, he kindly offered to break my nose for me if I ever wanted a nose job. Which was like, all right, cool. This big dude's telling me he's going to hit me in the face and we're just going to laugh about it. But that was actually not an uncomfortable conversation.
But you now don't hate this person from what it seemed, right?
What? Which one? The unnamed one?
Oh, Doug.
Doug. I never had a problem with Doug.
Right. So it's like, how do you go for, the person who waited for you afterwards was Doug, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
The person
I
I
misunderstood.
didn't name is just like a no-name open micer that sucks.
Okay.
So I'm not naming him for that
Sure.
reason.
But you're naming Doug because he's funny.
Well, I had him on my podcast.
Yeah,
and it was a great episode. So, I mean, he's not someone that I like probably share a lot of opinions with, but he was open to have this conversation, and he has made me laugh.
Okay. I laughed so hard when you said that about like, I can't get you a drink, because I was picturing Doug doing it. I was like, no, he would do that, I think.
No, that was not. No, but he also wasn't going to like wait to get me alone to like, you know, shoot the shit with me or like grill me about something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I know the way I told that was confusing. I apologize.
No, it's okay. But just trying to describe the navigating the comedy world as a female comic.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's a lot of the times it's totally fine, and then other times it's really unpleasant.
Sure. Well, what's like your favorite conversation been on your show so far? That was
I really love having guys reflect on like what it means to be a man and masculinity, and how consistently I hear guys complaining about like how crippling it is, and then like making the connection to them that like misogyny hurts us all because like toxic masculinity is really coming from little boys not being able to cry, and like anything that has any sort of female connotation being bad, and how stupid that is. And hearing guys like reflect on that or recognize that or give specific examples of that, I always think is interesting. So yeah, my podcast about women often turns into like a meditation on masculinity, which I don't love, but I don't hate either, because I just think gender is fascinating.
Yeah. I think you referenced recently, because again, I'm a listener. I remember you like mentioning how like now people like when you go on dates, like they'll have like checked out the show.
Yeah, that started to be a strange phenomenon, which I imagine you are very familiar with.
Welcome. Welcome to they're just going to know all the things.
Right. Yeah, it's really only started happening this summer. And now that I have like 54 episodes by now. So there's like a lot of hours of my voice.
Yeah.
And my episodes are short, so it's like a easy commute type thing. So I've had a few people this summer that like, we'll go out, we'll hang out, and then I'll mention the podcast, or they're like, oh yeah, I listened to one, and then we'll hang out like a week or two later, and they're like, I've listened to half of them. It's like, okay, so all of my stories.
Yeah.
And then it's always sort of an interesting, like, do you know that, like, I'll go to tell an anecdote on an actual date and be like, do you know this about me already, or
Yeah,
not?
like I forget which episode. Did I put that in an episode? I don't know.
Which I don't mind it. I think it's cool. I'm obviously flattered when people genuinely like it. And I'm not embarrassed about anything that I've said. But it is a very strange way where, like, somebody comes into a situation knowing so much more about me than I know about them.
See, I like it, and I'm curious if it's whether or not you like it for the same reason, because it's slightly different context. But like, I like it because then I can actually talk less, and like on the day, if I can just throw in some funny lines here and there if I need to, but otherwise, like, I can just ask and learn about them and just like hear their stories. Great. A complaint that I hear friends of mine say about men is that the men are always talking too much. So I want to say, like, oh, don't you like that you don't have to throw all the things out, but then maybe like you already, we're having to listen to them talk too much.
Yeah. It's I don't know that dynamic yet has like influenced men talking too much or not enough sort of thing. I don't feel like it is. I'm not looking for less pressure to talk on dates, I guess. For me, a good date is probably like, oh, I spoke 60% of the time, something like that, because I'm a talker for sure. But I am amazed how much I'm often overtalked. Not like people interrupting me or something, but just like how frequently when I am in like dating situations that guys just really like to explain things, which I also like to explain things. So I try not to like have the knee-jerk reaction that like, you're a man and that's why you're doing this. But it does happen for sure.
See, I like to talk less on a date in part because the more I talk, the more opportunities there are for me to fuck up. So it's like if I talk less, I can say less.
Is that like a thing that is top of mind for you? Or like in what ways are you worried about fucking up conversationally?
Like making jokes that just aren't good, or oversharing, because I overshare. I think I'm like autistically honest. It's just like if I will say something that could have been done in a one sentence and would have been more than enough information, and I'll do like 5 times that. And there was like some information that aren't maybe first date things,
right.
But also then my name, you search my name, the word man horse shows up. I'm like, is there anything inappropriate? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that I think there's any list of approved or unapproved topics for first dates.
Whether or not one was in a porno, some would say is not first date. It's more like a 5th date thing.
Why? I don't know. I think that like if somebody's going to be dating you where you have this like very well documented public sex stuff, like that's all out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, use a more specific word and miss anything. That's not for maybe somebody else like would wait a little bit longer to share certain things like that. But I don't know. Not that I totally subscribe to like put it all out on immediately, because if you can't handle me all, then you don't deserve me, sort of thing. But it's also like you want to waste a month or depending on what your like rate of dates is before you realize somebody's gonna like super freaked out by that. To me, that's silly.
Sure.
Like I'd rather a lot of my like bombshell facts about me I like to drop early so that I don't then have to like awkwardly tell the story later when you like know the players.
Well, what are some of your bombshells early things?
For instance, the whole story about how like I used to fuck my brother-in-law. Like that story.
This is normally always usually this notebook is a blank page. I was like, there's a few things I want to remember. And one was sister's husband.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a big deal anymore, but it's one of those things that
it will never not be a big deal to the rest of us.
Right. And it will always, it's a relevant story for someone, if I were to like marry somebody, I feel like they
like you have to fuck my sister first.
That.
That's it's a thing in our family.
But it's like, talking about exes or past sex stuff is always a little bit weird in any relationship. I'm more of the mind of like, you don't need to tell all that stuff. But like, if I was with someone for a long period of time and like that, I was the only person in the room that didn't know that would feel shitty. So I don't want to wait until after they would have met my brother-in-law and my sister to know that happened like a very long time ago. But yeah, the story is when I was in college, was hanging out with my older sister and her friends and ended up like had a summer fling with one of her friends. And it was very much a summer fling. It was like not feelings. It was just sex. In a way that I was like 20 years old and like, oh my, look at me. I'm a grown up.
How old
almost.
was he?
Like 24.
Oh, okay.
A little older, but not like weird older. Yeah. Also, part of it was like I was very much hanging out with their crew.
Sure.
Like he never came to meet my friends or anything like that. It was very much like, and it was it was like a month isolated sort of thing.
Okay.
But he broke things off with me because he realized he had feelings for my sister and they got together like right away. Like it was like 1 week in between the last time I spent the night at his place and the first time they hooked up. And it was like very messy and very uncool the way they handled it. Because looking back on it, they were like young idiots too. Like they were 20, whatever. To us at the time, they seemed old and adults. But looking back now, I'm like, they were just kids. They didn't know what they were doing. But yeah.
It was messy how? Like what, like...
Or just like...
Was there a fight?
Oh, yeah. I never spoke to him about it. After he sent me an email. And then after that, it was like all me trying to talk to my sister. So we, she avoided me for a little bit. And then I finally forced her to talk to me. She's like, we didn't mean for this to happen. And like, I'm sorry. And
how long's a little bit?
she dodged me for like a day.
Oh, okay.
And then we like had lunch and I was like, listen, I'm not okay with this. This is super gross. So, like, you're my sister. I love you. Nothing. I don't want anything to come between us. Like, I'm not okay with this. So like, please don't do this. But they did.
They did.
They moved in together after like 2 months. So it was all very fast. And my parents were like thrilled because my sister had been sort of unlucky in love. And, they like settled down hard and like got a dog and were just so happy together. And I was like not happy about it, obviously. Yeah. And it just felt super weird.
But what was the part that like you weren't, like you said it was weird,
any amount of
like,
time.
Okay.
I mean, it was like truly 1 week between the last time I had sex with him and the first time she
But
had
is
sex
there
with him.
is there a length of time that actually would have been okay?
Yes. If like even a month, if they had just like allowed any amount of cooling off time, sure. I would have, because I was like, they were in love, it happens. I wasn't mad because I had feelings for him. I was mad because there was absolutely no consideration given to the awkward situation that I was being put in and my feelings.
Would it have been different for you if you didn't know?
There was no way that I wouldn't have known.
No, like if they had done it and been like, we need to like not, Janet can't find out right now because you slept with her.
No, because I was still hooking up with him. Like I was.
Wait. Were you were hooking up?
No, like
overlapped?
He broke. No. Okay. He like ended things with me so he could start things with her.
Right.
So that was, I mean, yes, that's better than if they had been like behind my back.
So your sister was the other one, but they must have been flirting or something.
Yeah, I mean, they were good friends. So I knew that they were good friends. And she was like the whole summer, she was sort of like weird about it. And I kept checking in and being like, are you sure you're okay with this? Like, I know you're friends and that's weird. And I'm your little sister. Like, I can back off. And she assured me many times that she was fine with it. Which also, looking back, I just felt like, I don't blame that it happened. I blamed the way it was handled.
Sure.
And so if they just like taken a month to make sure that they still felt the same way and like then started dating, I would have been like, okay, at least they like, but like he came on vacation with my family. Like it was a whole thing. Like we had like a beach weekend with my parents and the two of them.
Like you can't hear them
like right after.
You need to not hear them fuck because it's so fresh enough that like you could imagine half of it, and as soon as you're there, now you're also picturing. It's
part of it. I was just like, really, like you don't have, you don't feel weird about this? That like he was just fucking your little sister? Like, come on. Anyway,
what'd she say to that?
I mean, I didn't say that. Okay. Like we had many kind of conversations and altercations about it. And then we just sort of didn't talk about it for a while. And then, time passed. And now it's like such ancient history.
It's just a fun thing on Thanksgiving.
No, I mean, again,
it's like a
we've
fun,
never,
like drunk uncle story on
sort of, but
Thanksgiving.
it's not a thing that we discuss.
Okay.
Certainly, like my sister and I to each other have maybe acknowledged it or made some jokes, and most of my family has heard me tell my joke about it.
Right.
But it's not like something we acknowledge.
Okay.
Because why? Because there's nothing. It's like there's nothing.
But there's
to
always
say.
that like one uncle who thinks like he's the most hilarious person, and just
I don't have a drunk uncle.
Well, then good for you.
I mean, there's plenty of drunk people in my family at various gatherings, but I don't have that character.
I thought you were going to say like a different type of uncle. I was like, oh boy. Okay. No,
I don't, I mean, that could go in so many different directions.
oh, sure.
I don't know
Just
specifically.
only 2 weeks ago, I had someone on who like a hard left turn. There was that kind of uncle. I'm like, okay, cool.
Like a sex uncle?
Like an uncle, or like it was someone they call uncle, but like close person in the family who, was very inappropriate.
No.
Yeah.
None of that.
So I look, sometimes I get like these random like hard lefts that get thrown
Right.
at me when you start talking about sex. In the same way that it's made me like think twice about asking certain questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like asking someone how they lost their virginity. I don't think as many people realize
So I mean,
how
I
not
would
good
say,
of a question
I would
that
say
is.
I don't think many men realize. A lot of women would be like, date rape.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, I know a lot of women that was their experience.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's very bad.
But it's like such a
My story is very cute and funny, but I know that that's true for a lot of people.
well, cute, funny story in a moment, but like so many, like it's such a common question. It's a thing that we think is just a baseline fine thing. That's like, when did you lose your virginity? Oh, is there a fun story? And then we don't realize, like, I mean, you forget that as soon. I mean, not that like you can't get raped when you're like 22, but like if someone says like they were in high school when they lost their virginity, I immediately don't want to know the story because I feel like there's a higher likelihood this is not going to be good.
Oh, interesting. I wouldn't place an age on that likelihood because a lot of the women that I knew that lost their virginity to date rape, they were older.
Like out of college?
Like
older?
in college.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
I should have been like, when you're out of college, I'm a little, not less concerned, but like I'm not anticipating this tragic. But when someone says 14, because how many people say they're 14, and they are prepared to share how.
Yeah.
But it's like, I just don't ask that question anymore.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's totally reasonable to avoid that question.
Yeah. But now allow me to lean into the question. What's your cute and funny story?
Oh, I was like with a boyfriend that I love very much, and it was our 6-month anniversary. So we went out
That's the sex anniversary.
We went out to a fancy dinner at the Olive Garden, and then went driving around afterwards and like parked. I'm from a pretty rural area, so we parked next to like the sand pits, and got in the back of my Saturn, which is not a very large car, and afterwards the cops came by because we were like technically trespassing where we had parked, and so my boyfriend got out of the car and was like talking to the officer while I was like pulling my clothes back on, very obviously, and as they were pulling away, or the cop like said some weird thing to my boyfriend that was like an inside joke that I didn't get.
With like a men's inside joke?
No, well at first he said so I hear you think I smell like bacon. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? And then my boyfriend started laughing, and he like understood what was happening before I did, because my town had this like police explorer program where high school kids would ride around with cops on their patrol and be like professional snitches. And so like my boyfriend was buddies with one of these guys where they were in class together. And so he realized that the kid was in the car and like had heard our names be read, because the cop took our license and like read our names through the scanner. So his friend was like just messing with us. And then as they pulled out, he was like yelled my boyfriend's name. And then, the next day at school, like everybody knew about it. And it was a whole thing. So like there were no negative repercussions. I was like very concerned I was going to get brought home by the police.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, it was scary, but
like, would your parents have, I don't know, how much would they have?
Well, my mom the only thing my mother ever used to say to me was just don't get brought home by the police. Because my sister had when she was in high school, like after a party or something. And so I got away with a lot more than my sister. But that was like the one thing that I was like, if the police are involved, you're in a huge amount of trouble.
Well, what was your parents' like attitude towards like sex? Was there talk? Like, what was your?
So many talks. I asked my mom how babies were made when I was 7 years old after watching an episode of Murphy Brown that I didn't understand. And she was like very...
Wait, why are you watching Murphy Brown at 7?
I used to watch reruns of Murphy Brown. I don't know, with my sister
You
and
ever
my
hear of
parents.
Barney? I don't know.
Well, I also watched children's shows, but it was like at night, my parents or my sister were watching TV and I was just like in the room with them. And I used to think babies were made by a special kind of making out, like a flick of the tongue or something. And there's something they were like talking about how she was pregnant and it had happened in the office they were, and everybody's like super grossed out. And I was like, why? They were just kissing. What's the big deal? So I asked my mom, and she said, a man puts his private parts into a lady's private parts. And I was like, okay. And pretended like I have a bit about this. So I'm just slipping into my bit.
It's okay.
That's
Slip
embarrassing.
Fall back into it.
It's horrible.
Margot did like her type 5 on like her facial feminization surgery after I had seen her do it the day before at a mic. But like I was like, no, it's okay. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let you throw the bits in.
I can't allow myself to do that. Anyway, so then it just established this open door policy with me and my mom where we have an above ground pool in my backyard. And so like the look on your face, I didn't know that was a white trash thing until I was in my 20s. It's a very nice above ground pool, I assure you. We would like swim around when I was like 10 or 11 or like about in puberty and whatnot. And I would just ask her everything I could think of. And she would answer me as honestly as she could. And
so at 10, what type of questions are even popping out?
oh, I was such a perv. Well, it was a lot of, it was a lot of like periods and body stuff, I'm sure. But the question she loves to remind me that I asked is that, like, Mom, in movies and TV, when you see people having sex, why are they always so out of breath? And her answer was, well, it's a lot of work. Just like a totally age-appropriate answer.
It is. And it would make sense because, like, even if there was a follow-up, you could be like, well, we aren't making a new human. Yeah, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, no, I think that she was very honest about, you're not always making a new human.
Well, yeah, I don't know. When you're talking to a 10-year-old.
Right, but I think that my mother was raised in a very conservative Boston Irish Catholic household and was like, didn't want her girls to be sexually repressed and like worked really hard to make my home like more open and, always, not be shaming. And she, I think, is now upset at how successful she was because I like tell her more than she wants to hear and, have a podcast in which I talk about all these things. And
yeah, but I feel like your podcast isn't super explicit.
Yeah, but
about
your standards for explicitness are very different than my mother's.
Okay. Fair enough, I guess. But that's cool that like there was what about your dad's like stance towards all that?
He's just couldn't care less. I mean, in a way where he's definitely not the kind of dad that's like macho protecting of his daughter's honor or something. He was always like, you're going to make her own decisions and I trust you. So I never spoke to him as much about that kind of stuff, but not in a way that I felt like I couldn't talk to him. Just like he wasn't the person for that.
Do you still seek your mom's counsel on dating, sex, or anything like that?
No, I wouldn't say anymore.
When did the sex questions stop, do you think?
Probably by the time I started having sex, because I, outpaced.
Outpaced?
Well, just, at this point, I've had a hell of a lot more different type of sexual experiences than my mom has. So.
I don't know. I feel like if I was in a long relationship, I would... maybe I wouldn't ask my parents. They're divorced, but if they had stayed together, I would feel. I've met people who like they will go with their relationship questions to their parents who are in a long, successful marriage, and they'll ask like, "How'd you make this work?" Or,
right.
"Oh, I am. Am I ready to have kids? Or am I ready to get married to this person?"
Yeah, but
things
I don't
like that.
think that people are asking like, "How do you keep this sexual spark alive?" from their parents. There are certainly families where that's the case, but that's not. I'm no longer seeking sexual advice from my parents.
I want to ask those questions of my parents, or like things that.
Well, you should.
Well, I want to ask the things about like what led to a divorce, or why'd you cheat, and things like that.
Do you have that kind of relationship where you could have those conversations?
I'm just getting to the point where I'm like we're having we're having relationships.
So so maybe wait a little bit.
No, I wait a bit. I do, tell my dad I don't like his wife, but The Man Whore Podcast is excitingly sponsored by Tushy, the modern bidet attachment. We've got a Tushy installed in my apartment here in Bushwick, and oh my, is a fan favorite of the household. I'm a big fan already, not just because they paid me to say that, but it's actually a pleasant experience that's perfect for the post poop, the post sex, the pre-sex, the pre-butt play, the post-butt play. Really, it's perfect for like every situation that goes on back there. I got my roommate Matt here, and Matt, what do you think about our new Tushy bidet attachment?
I'm here for the Tushy. It's an erotic experience I didn't know I needed.
Yeah, it's not the intended purpose. I think erotic is stimulation, but oh my, is it a wonderful side effect? And it keeps you clean. Yeah, you know how you like take a shower before you go and have the sexy time. Sometimes you don't have time for all the showering part of it, but you still want to feel fresh down there. Hey, go in, get yourself emptied out. Even if you don't have to poop, I would go to use the Tushy just to give myself a sense of freshness. So I'm here for it. And you can get 10% off your very own Tushy attachment, which starts at only $69. Really? Yeah, Matt just said, really? I was like, yeah, really? It's only $60. The base one is $69, but you get 10% off your order when you go to hellotushy.com and use promo code MANWHORE. Again, that's hellotushy, HELLOTUSHY.com, promo code MANWHORE. Stop wiping and start washing with Tushy.
Yeah, I feel very, very lucky. My parents just celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary.
That's just wild.
It's pretty wild.
I was just at this like couples only resort for the weekend down in Cancun, and like I met some of these couples where like they're in their late 40s. They're in their some women people in their 50s who've been together 35 years, and they're just like at this like pool naked with like surrounded by 100 people, but they're like, yeah, no, we've been in love 35 years, and like, how the fuck do you do that? And it's just it's so
routine is a powerful thing.
That is. Well, what's your current dating situation now?
Just out here trying to find a spouse so hard.
Trying to find a spouse.
Trying to find a spouse so badly. I just want to get married and have babies.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, very much so. Now I say that and people think I'm joking, but I'm not. I'm all my friends that aren't comedy friends are married with children, and I am so jealous of them. Or starting to have children.
Are you more jealous of the children part than the
no, I think
part?
Equally both. If I had to choose between having a lifelong partner and having children, I think I would choose kids. But I want both.
Yeah.
And have not been successful thus far. And dating in New York is horrible.
It's a horror show, but
I'm out here on Tinder. Which is so stupid.
Yeah, that's where you're gonna find the spouse. Which, like,
well,
you might, but like, also,
Cupid is dead. I'm not gonna. I toyed around with. I signed up for Match because my mother offered to pay for it, and that was a disheartening experience. And I don't know. I just don't think
in person. I don't know.
Where in person?
Okay, so like I'll meet people on Bumble here and there, but I honestly now don't. I go through waves. So whatever, but I mean, some of the one of the last dates I went on that was really good. Like, some woman just like flagged me down. She liked my shirt. She thought my shirt was funny. I was actually leaving Lucky Jackson, and she was like, "Hey, your shirt's so funny." And I'm like, oh, "Okay." And then we started talking, and I left with the number. Or like when I was flying to Cancun, someone online behind me on the plane commented on the pins on my backpack, and then we had a conversation while waiting to get onto the plane, and then exchanged like Instagrams. And then we chatted a bit, and like we're gonna grab coffee after the holiday. And so I don't know, like
people don't hit on me in public.
Have you tried hitting on people?
I don't want to. I mean,
for as progressive as you are,
no,
you still...
it's not about being progressive. I've certainly made the first move tons of times.
So then is it about laziness?
Somewhat, or just like I've put myself out there in every possible way. And it's not like I'm never going to make a first move again, but I've not had great results when I've done that. And it's just like, I'm kind of in almost like a defensive, like self-preservation sort of phase where it's like I'll go through cycles where I'm like,
wait, so you approach dudes and get rejected?
yes, that has happened. I mean, why?
Like-
You're giving me this look.
Well,
like,
no, I'm just surprised.
me too. I don't
Yeah.
understand why. Sorry, I'm yelling into your
It's
microphone.
okay.
I am as baffled. Sometimes people will be like, I don't get why you can't find anybody. I'm like,
Yeah.
neither do I.
like-
I think I'm a fucking catch.
Yeah, go check out, or there'll be a promo image on my social media. You'll
If
see what she
anybody
looks
wants
like.
to marry
It's-
me, let me know.
You know, don't be careful.
I
saying
mean,
that.
I'll vet the applications, but
Well, like, what when you approach like dudes, like what? I mean, what's some?
I mean, I don't know.
Are the
I mean,
shutdowns just because they have somebody else or whatever, or
no,
is it?
well, I mean, there have been times where I mean, I don't have like a laundry list of my rejections, but I mean, there have been times where I think mostly my experiences are like, I'll go on a date that's, you know, either I think is promising and then nothing comes of it, or is, you know, mediocre on both sides and nothing comes of it. But yeah, and then I've had a couple like New York dating situations where I was seeing somebody for like a month and thought it was like really going somewhere, and then they weren't ready for a relationship, even though like they were sending all the signals that were like had their foot on the accelerator, and I was like, okay, cool. And then, you know,
then a hard
decided,
stop.
yeah.
So like they'll do like they'll act very boyfriendy. Type
Yeah,
of
or
thing.
just like, you know, setting a pace of hanging out like twice a week and like, you know, calling me on the phone and talking for. I had 2 summers in a row. I had like a very similar situation where I met a guy online and we started dating, and, you know, it was like a good connection and felt, you know, all of that. And they would like call me on the phone and talk, just to talk. And we would talk for like an hour on the phone, which is just like such a weird throwback. And I mean, liked it.
Was the conversation good?
Yeah. I mean, it was like genuine conversation. And then they like really pulled the brakes, like had a whole conversation, like breaking up with me before we were actually even together, which is my least favorite thing. It has happened to me so many times. Not like I want to be ghosted.
You would
but
rather
like,
it be like a shorter, like you're making this to be a grandiose breakup where it's like, we've known each other 6 weeks.
right. Yeah. Like I had a conversation with a guy who I really liked. We like went to the movies, and then afterwards we like got a drink, and he's like, okay, so we need to talk. And like, first of all, why do we go to the movies before you're like, but
well, I really wanted to see Deadpool too. So
he was like basically saying that he wasn't ready to be the kind of boyfriend that I was clearly looking for, which is fair. You know, I respect that. But then also in the conversation, he was sort of fishing around to see if I would consider converting to Judaism.
are you not Jewish?
I'm not. It shocks everyone, particularly this guy. And I was like, truly, we're in this conversation. I'm like, I wouldn't mind having Jewish kids. Like, I'd love for my kids to be Jewish. Cool. But like, also, you just said you're not ready to be my boyfriend, but you're also clearly indicating that me not being Jewish is a deal breaker, which I asked you about, you know, 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
Anyway, it was just like a very baffling thing where I'm like, clearly you like think I'm almost wifey material, but you're not ready to be a boyfriend. Like, what's happening?
Yeah, that's so.
So I've had a lot of that kind of nonsense.
I say this next part, not trying to solve your problem. I'm just asking
please.
to curiosity. Do you let dudes know early on that you are specifically looking for something that is going to become?
Yeah, well, I mean, also, I'm ready to have
not just a
something
boyfriend,
in
but
between.
marriage. Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't. I'm 31 years old. It should not be shocking that like I'm looking to date someone in a way that could become serious and then lead to marriage, because people still get married.
They do.
But yeah, I mean, I always, again, talking about like first date conversation, I try to, in a totally casual, like not, you know, just like mention something about like wanting kids or that sort of thing.
Just
like
like
talking about my married friends.
Looking
or
around
whatever.
the bar, be like, is there a baby I can point to? To be like, see, oh, there's a baby. Yeah, I would love to have kids. There's a baby. It's relevant to the conversation. There's a baby on the TV.
I think I'm pretty good at neutrally slipping it in. Also, I think that there are plenty of dudes out there that want the same thing or do that even more than I do. Like, make that clear.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I'm also happy to just like see where things go. I'm not like interviewing a husband on a first date. But yeah, I can't seem to get either. I would be like happy to have a, you know, steady casual thing, for a while I'm on the search for a serious partner, but I can't seem to make anything stick. It's disheartening.
Do you feel like no, it's just baffling to me, but that's that's a whole different thing. I'm curious. It's like you mentioned you were like people still get married. Like, do you feel like left behind in the way, like especially in New York, where there's like all these poly people and non-monogamous people and people who don't want to get married because they're in a state of arrested development, all that stuff. Do you kind of feel like we're all the like semi old fashioned people? Just
yeah.
a little,
Well, I also
we're all the people from the 90s.
Right. Well, I can't help but resent that it's considered old fashioned to like want to be in a monogamous relationship, even though in the New York context it might seem that way. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it's old fashioned. I just feel like it's
a lot of
trendy to be not monogamous or something like that
Yeah,
in New York, at least.
Yeah. And well, I think it's, we're in a time where there's like more opportunity and like acceptance for non-traditional relationships than there's probably ever been. And so I'm all about that. Like, I don't think people should be monogamous if they don't want to be by any stretch of the imagination.
But like you very much want to be.
Yes. And so I've had sort of the strange experience of like dating lately where it's like I basically have to like compromise what I want to do because there don't seem to be other people who like are on board with what I'm looking for. Or it's just such a small pool.
That's unfortunate. What kind of like compromises?
Like dating people that are polyamorous and like see, or like just sort of, again, I think it's interesting to think about like when you talk about traditional context or whatever, like when my mom was young, you went out with a different guy every day of the week. Like you dated a bunch of different people and then you get married. But the difference is you don't have sex with those people, I guess, is the main.
Well, there's like also the trend of the like, whether it be the like monogamy, non-monogamy, or the like vanilla shaming.
Yeah, I feel
like, or you're not kinky.
Right. I feel I've definitely felt defensive about that at sometimes because like I don't think of myself as a like super vanilla person, but obviously compared to any number of people I am. And so I'm not offended by that designation necessarily. But I just think that people get weirdly, it becomes so hypocritical where the people, kinky people are people who are like kind of more on the fringes of, relationship types or whatever are so ready to like be just as shitty to people in traditional relationships as people have been to them.
Like those normies. And like, and I go to parties and where I like people, like I will hear those conversations. I'm just like, they were doing that to us. We didn't like it very much. Right. Like,
it's just, human beings just want to create teams for some reason. It's such a bummer. Yeah.
And then we're in an industry where like we got our team, but we're also like a bunch of solo people within the team.
Yeah. It definitely, when I look at my life compared to my non-comedy friends and my comedy friends, it's definitely just a very different lifestyles. And I feel very much like I want to find the happy medium. Like, I guess another thing that I resent about common attitudes about like monogamy or getting married is that like that means you settle down and you're boring and that's it. And I'm like, no, fuck that. Like, I want to get married and have somebody who's like my partner to go do stuff with and like continue to live an interesting life.
Yeah. I was just like at this resort, which like I'm not supposed to say is a swinger resort, but like there are swingers there, but it's not a swinger resort. There were like monogamous people there, but they just want to be in like a fun, do something different, sexy environment.
For sure.
My partner and I were fucking kept crushing on these couples, and it turns out they were monogamous, and we're like, especially this one like young one because they're the only ones like also in their 20s. Mm-hmm. So we were because everyone there was like mid 30s to like late 50s, so for the most part. And so there's one really cute couple who were like in their mid 20s, and then we would, anytime we saw them walking by, we pointed to be like, oh, it's our cute monogamous. Like we wouldn't talk to them, but like secretly,
right?
Oh, it's the pretty monogamous people. Like,
so how did you, if you didn't meet them, how did you know that they were monogamous?
Well, she had talked to them like casually in the hot tub, like they were just all hanging out and talking.
She'd scoped out the situation.
Well, yeah, she thought they were cute, and she was like just trying to see like, what's your deal? Because we had to ask everybody like, so what's your sitch? Everybody
should just be wearing like name cards or something.
Some places will do certain types of like
a wristband or something.
So honestly, that would be helpful. But yeah, no, but yeah, it's like monogamous people can have plenty of fun.
Sure. I had fun while monogamous. It's super possible.
A wild thing. And how does comedy kind of play a role into your dating life? I feel like that's another thing to add.
I think that I've been pretty much single the whole time I've been doing comedy. So I definitely think it's a factor in that dudes don't want to date comedians.
Dudes don't want to date women funnier than them.
Right. I mean, honestly, it's not to say that that's every guy's case for sure, but there is a weird competitiveness. And I think a lot of guys don't want to feel that way, but they can't help themselves. Or like, I've sort of seen it play out, whether it's subconsciously or not, where, dating guys who think I'm funny and are totally supportive and all that, but like, clearly there's so much of our like straight dating rituals is, a guy tells a joke, woman laughs at a joke. That's what flirting is. And, my style is like, I'm going to jokingly question your masculinity. And, I think it's hilarious. And you might in the bar when we're like playing shuffleboard, but then when I keep doing it.
I mean, if you're carrying it into bed, like that, maybe.
Oh, no. I would never do that. That's an interesting thing. I
like it. I think it's funny. But I know not everyone shares that sensibility.
No. I mean more like I'm a shit talker for sure. But like once I'm with someone, most of that goes away. Like I am not. I'm nice. I'm nice
You're
to my
a nice
partners.
person?
I'm a nice person.
Oh, look at that.
I know, it's
what
so
a
weird.
shock.
But like I am definitely a very like my flirtation style is very combative, but once I'm like in a relationship with someone, that doesn't really play as much of a role. I mean, certainly there's still like, teasing each other or whatnot, but certainly that does not carry into bed. I'm like not interested in humiliating someone.
Sure.
I really don't want to do that.
It's just so weird when people say like I think I even I understood if I heard like a You Made It Weird episode from years ago, and he had on like a really funny female comedian. Of course, I'm not gonna remember who she was, but I always remember what they said was essentially like the guys, they say a woman, they want to date a woman with a sense of humor, but
that means that she'll laugh at their jokes. Yeah,
but that never made sense because I'm like, I want someone who's going to make me laugh because like I'm already doing the making people laugh part.
I think that that's part of why a lot of comics date each other, like, although there's all sorts of, attitudes about whether like, they should or not. Yeah. But I think a lot of women comics like dating guy comics because they don't feel threatened. And it's like, we're just funny. We're both funny and maybe we have different styles or we do our own thing, but it doesn't like threaten them in a way where a guy who is never identified as particularly funny before. That's the thing that's always crazy to me. It's like guys who like don't think of themselves as like a jokey guy all of a sudden start feeling the need to make jokes
because
and
you're
then they
funny
make bad
like,
jokes and it's like, I am not going to give you a pity laugh. That's just never a thing I'm going to do. So I don't mind if you make a bad joke.
You for that,
that's fine for you to make a bad joke or make a silly pun or whatever, and I'll acknowledge that you were making a joke, but I'm not going to laugh at it because I don't need you to be funny. I'm not like, I want you to have a good sense of humor, but that kind of
I want you to laugh at my jokes. I want you to laugh at my jokes.
And I'm happy to laugh at your jokes if you make good jokes. But if you don't make good jokes, that's fine. It's not going to kill my boner.
My exes would sometimes bring that up. Like I had one ex who like tried to make jokes, and then when they wouldn't land with me, would just always like shit on herself to be like, I know I'm not funny, and then I feel the need like, no, you're very funny. Sometimes I swear, on occasion,
It's an awkward thing. I had that dynamic with a guy who it was awkward. It became very hard because I'm like, I'm not looking for you to entertain me, but you clearly feel this like burden that you're supposed to.
But it's like it's like that might not. It's like you didn't get interested in him because he was funny. I'm assuming, right?
Right.
There's like different thing. Maybe he's really smart or like really has abs or whatever. I don't know.
I definitely don't want a personality. I just want abs.
I mean, don't we all? I'm still trying. But yeah, I think that's always I think that's the thing. People feel the need to try to be funny because they think that's the thing everybody wants. Like sometimes people fall for people who are very painfully unfunny,
right? But
their intellect is super sexy, or they're very adventurous and like hiking or whatever bullshit people do.
Sure.
I don't know. Are there any like particular qualities you look for in dudes?
No. I mean, I think just like chemistry and conversation is And so like that can take many forms. So I don't have like a particular type that I'm looking for, but just like someone that I can get along with. And is like, I mean, honestly, it's now after years of struggling in dating, it's more about like, how is somebody going to respond to me? Because I can be interested in various different personality types or interests, but yeah, somebody who can hold their own in conversation and is like just happy with who they are, I think is.
Oh, well, that's going to be very difficult in this city. Now you want self-confidence?
Yeah, I want self-confidence.
Fake confidence easy to find. Self-confidence
is. No, I want, because I think that that's what it comes down to. If a guy is confident, he's not going to care whether I'm funnier than he is because he's confident that he's better at me, whatever the other thing is, than I am. And like, there's plenty of things I'm not good at, and I'm happy to own them. Yeah.
And is part of you fed up with the dudes at this point?
Yeah, certainly.
It's just like, if they're going to be, it's like, I'm running out here.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is definitely like, I try really hard not to feel totally jaded against men and like completely disgusted and resentful, but sometimes I do. And yet
you do this show, yet you do this podcast where you talk to those dudes.
Right. And so that's the thing. I actually don't ever get tired of talking about this stuff and engaging with it. I find it endlessly interesting. And my biggest goal, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, is like make guys think about something that they hadn't thought of before. Because there's so much, women in the way that like, people of color are forced to engage with race constantly. Like women are forced to deal with gender disparities all the time, and guys can check out of it and they can think about it sometimes. But they don't have to. And so I like having those conversations that make guys think about things that might make them uncomfortable. And I don't want to make them uncomfortable, but I want them to like experience some of that consideration for somebody else's perspective.
For sure. Well, Janet, do you mind doing like a quick, like a lightning round bonus episode?
Sure, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Patreon people, you'll hear that tomorrow. All my $5 and up fan whores, you'll hear that over there. But for now, it was the fan whore thing. Okay. Wasn't my idea, I swear.
I believe you.
Can you all tell how nervous I get when Janet's in the room?
I didn't even flinch when he said fan whore. He could just tell what I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, for now, Janet, where can people find your show?
Oh, well, you should listen to Dude Talks to a Lady. It's on all the podcast places. You should follow me on Instagram at Janet_Hyde and validate my physical appearance, and
validate or like remind you where you're at, because isn't your whole thing that you're like, you think you're hotter than you are?
No, I'm hot. I think I'm hot.
Agreed. I'm saying your bit is that.
I used to have a bit about that. I haven't done that bit in a while.
I appreciate so hard from someone on the other end of the side of that.
I wasn't like a hot girl in middle school, so it took me a while to own feeling hot and thinking that other people agree with me. And a lot of people don't agree with me. If you follow me on Instagram and think I'm not hot, feel free to tell me. And I run a monthly show first Thursdays at Tip Top Bar and Grill called Female Comedians with Tits.
With the very funny Maricela.
My co-producer and co-host. She's the best. So yeah, come see us in Bed-Stuy.
Yeah, fantastic. They too are my favorite women to watch yell at dudes. It's my favorites. Jen, thanks so much for talking to me, and why don't you say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye, everybody.
So nervous? I don't know. Good.
I just wasn't sure if I was supposed to say something clever or not. But goodbye. Thanks for listening.
I don't have a. Was keep it crispy. I don't have anything.
No tagline.
Dumb like that. Well, I have a stay slutty line, but that's my line. That's later. But
great. I'm not going to say that.
No, never. You're not at all.
Be comfortable if you're a prude. It's fine.
Be comfortable. Great T-shirt. So what'd you think? Did you enjoy that one? I know I did. It's always a fun and stimulating conversation chatting with Janet Hyde about why men are terrible. Go follow her on the social medias, and always you should be following me. I am on Twitter and Instagram at @TheBillyPresida. Say hello. Use the hashtag #ManWhorePodcast. Let me know what you thought about this episode. You can also go like the Man Whore Podcast Facebook page. Again, search for Man Whore Podcast. If it says Billy Procida, that is not the page to go like. We are selling the merch, everybody. I am selling that sweet, sweet merch. We've got the pegging t-shirts. We got the Stay Slutty panties. We've got now an arrayment of buttons. Got 3 different buttons on there. Soon to add stickers. Look, you want to get in on this merch game? Go to gumroad.com/manwhorepodcast. Last but certainly not least, if you want to hear more of Janet Hyde tomorrow, you want to hear that bonus episode with Mia, you want to just support the show for as little as $1 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Get yourself a fan whore membership today. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. Next week, we got an episode with the wonderful Lisa Davis. Going to talk a little bit more about the nutritional aspects of sex. You know, like what should I be eating the 24 hours leading up to butt stuff? We'll find out next week, but until then, stay slutty.